Hi, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Everyone can hear me all right? All right. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. The Love and Service group. I really like this group. I've been here numerous times. I was here back in December to hear my friend Oleon speak. We came over and I've been here a few times before that over the years. And so it's great to be back and always appreciate to be able to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous on any level. And so to be invited here is great, and to be able to share my story with you. And I just love the enthusiasm of this group. It's really cool. There's a lot of good stuff going on here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was a great technology announcement, Megan. That was man, come a long way. I know a couple guys that when I got sober that, maybe they're twisting and turning a little bit, but, remember when the days when you weren't supposed to pull out your phone during a meeting, and now we're taking money from your phone. So it's all right. Progress, right? We have to advance, and keep moving forward. As society goes, so goes Alcoholics Anonymous, the good stuff and the not so good stuff. But it's important that we all stay aware of what's going on out in the world so we can be aware of what's going on here. And so I'm just really glad to be here. My sobriety date is August 12th, 1982. I have a home group. It's the men's meeting that meets over in Tiburon on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. And it's been my home group since I got sober. I was in a place for 3 weeks, and the first Monday I was out, I was told to go to that meeting. I went to that meeting, and been going ever since. I'm not sure what else to do on Monday nights, so I just keep showing up there. And I have a sponsor. He knows he sponsors me. He actually leaves on a cruise tomorrow, so good for him. And it's a 5 or 6 day cruise in the California coast. We've communicated a bit over the last few days, and I'm taking a trip myself on Tuesday. Taking a trip, not taking a trip, we're going to be on them. And it's good life here in Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't what I've received here isn't anything that I was looking for when I got here. I hated myself. I was suicidal, but I was a failure at it. And you guys had a much better offer for me and a much better deal. And I bought into what you were saying. For anyone that's new here, for you folks that raised your hand first 30 days, in your first 90 days, it's kind of funny. After 90 days, we go from day counters to month counters, right? Because then it's 6 months. But welcome. Those first 90 days were so important to me, and trying to help build a foundation on how I was going to stay sober. Because if you're anything like me, I had a plan of what I was going to do, right? My plan consisted of, I'll get a job. I'll stay sober for a while, maybe 6 months to a year. I'll get a job, maybe get my old job back, but I'll get some kind of job. I'll get a place to live, and I'm going to start saving money, because sometime during that 6 month and 1 year period, I'm going to have enough money to go get loaded again. That was my plan. It was a horrible plan, but it made sense at the time, right? And so if you have a plan, that's all right. We won't tell you to get rid of it, but hopefully it leaves you if you stick around long enough to hear what we're doing here. And that's what happened to me. I don't know when my plan left me, but it was sometime before that 6 months, I really started to love what was going on here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got out of this place, and I was up in Calistoga. It was kind of like an AA boot camp. And when I got out, I was kind of directed to AA. Said, just go to AA, man. You don't have to do anything else. Just make sure you go to a meeting. Always know what your next meeting is. Even when I got out, they said, I got out on a Friday. They said, make sure you go to a meeting in your community. Go to a meeting in Marin on Friday night. And don't leave that Friday night meeting until what meeting you're going to on Saturday. And when you go to that meeting on Saturday, don't leave that meeting till you know where you're going Sunday. And what they were telling me, and what they were showing me, was that if I had an idea of what I was doing, there was less chance I would talk myself out of it. If I had already committed to other people, that I was going to go to a meeting. My ego was like, well, I can't let that person down who I've never met before, because they said they'd meet me at the meeting. And so I started to get into a flow. So I got out on a Friday, and when that Monday rolled around, I ended up at the men's meeting that's still my home group today. And, so it was very important to me. So for people counting days, if you're unsure, just try to know what meeting you're going to next before you leave here tonight. And it may serve you well. I know there's a lot of good AA over here in the East Bay. We kind of got a good thing going between over here in the East Bay and Marin County. And I like to call, whether it's Highway 4, whether it's Interstate 80, 580, 680, they're all the broad highway to me when I'm coming to AA, right? We're walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. And it's a pretty cool thing. I was a drinker. I loved getting drunk. I loved what alcohol did for me. I used a lot of other things. I picked up my first drink when I was, well, I can't say I went out to get drunk for my first time when I was 15, right? And there was many times I had drank before that. They weren't planned drunks. I was the cute little bartender at family functions. I would sneak drinks every now and then when guests would come over and I was pretending to do the dishes. I'd clear the table and maybe take sips here or there. But the first time I went out to drink, I went out to get drunk. It wasn't a social thing at all. And I loved what alcohol did for me. It was a Friday night, and it was an ice skating rink. I was born and raised in San Francisco. It was an ice skating rink out in the avenues. And that Friday, it was magic for me. I mean, I blacked out. I threw up. Some weird things happened. I think a senior, I think I kissed a senior, and I'm this kid. And so it was like, wow, this is good stuff. And I don't know if she kissed me, but I kissed her. And but when Monday rolled around, I was a different person because it was like I went from one side of the schoolyard to the other, right? And I had found something. I had a lot of ambition before that of things I wanted to do, of things places I wanted to go. I had some dreams, I guess. But when I found that alcohol, when I got through that night and my trouble wasn't too severe, I wanted to do it again. And so that's kind of how it went for me. But something happened to me that first night that I didn't know happened to me until I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was my mother asked me a simple question when she came to pick me up, right? And so I thought I'm cool, right? Except I got a little puke on my white T-shirt, and I kissed the girl and drank the Schlitz malt liquor and all that. But she said, "How much have you been drinking?" And I gave the standard answer of I had a couple beers, and knowing that I had more than that. I was out of the blackout at this time, and that served me well when I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, because oftentimes we hear about the invisible line. When did I cross that invisible line from going from social drinking to alcoholic drinking? And I didn't really have to think about that too much, because what I heard someone say was when I stopped bragging about my drinking and started lying about my drinking, that's when I became alcoholic. And that first night I was in that car with my mother, and she asked me the very simple question. I had no reason to lie, except intuitively I knew what I had done was wrong. She asked me the simple question, how much have you had to drink? And I lied about it. I said I had a couple beers, knowing that I had 6. Now, around my friends, I would say, oh yeah, I finished them all, right? Probably sneaky forward a couple and all that. But the fact was I finished them. As my drinking went along into junior and senior in high school, and even, 18, 19 years old, I started not telling my friends how much I was drinking. I would hide it because I was embarrassed by it. I was doing things that they weren't doing, or at least I didn't think they were doing. And where I was growing up, I was still hanging around the same place that I did when I first started drinking. And now I'm 19, 20 years old, right? The drag is it was an elementary schoolyard. So I was slowly becoming one of those guys, right? And we had a guy like that when I first started hanging out there. He was the guy that would go to the liquor store and buy us the booze. He wasn't 21, but he looked it and they sold it to him. And so we'd give him a big order on Friday and Saturday nights. But now I never looked 21 at that age, but now I was becoming the older guy, and I was not liking myself about that. And, so through different circumstances, I was a tenderloin drinker. I'd go down and I'd start drinking with people I shouldn't be drinking with people I never planned on drinking with. I was doing things that once the alcohol was in my system, it was making decisions for me. I had no idea that I was going to do things like this. And oftentimes the next time I got loaded, I would tell myself, don't do those things tonight. But then, after you have a couple beers in you, it's a good idea. And so it was like, it was beer. It didn't matter what it was, right? I tried many different things. Chapter 3 was for me, the different things, switching from scotch to brandy, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off without a solemn oath, quitting like every other Monday, right? I'm not going to do that again. And then by the time Thursday rolls around, I am thinking, well, maybe tomorrow night will be different. It's Friday. I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it another try. And where I grew up, a lot of the stuff I did when I would leave the schoolyard, I had a lot of good times, right? So I was a 49er fan. I was a Giants fan. I was a rock and roll fan. I loved going to see live music, still do. And, but it was all associated with getting loaded, everything I did. And by the time I was, well, even in high school, I wouldn't want to go to school unless I had a couple joints in me. I'd smoke a couple joints on the way to school, right? Just to feel comfortable. I was becoming antisocial is what was happening to me. And, so by the time I'm 18, 19, I've wrecked a couple cars. I'm still a blackout drinker. There's trouble at home. Where my parents didn't know what to do with me, but I'm still living there. And at the age of 21, I made the decision to move to Marin County, and it was a perfect setup for me because I was already working in a family business in Sausalito. It was a food business, and the paranoia had set in. I was antisocial. I was paranoid that all my friends, or a lot of my friends, knew what I was doing. Like in my mind, they knew I was going to the Tenderloin. They knew I was ending up with people that I shouldn't be ending up with. And I was very embarrassed. And because I was a failure at suicide, I didn't know what to do. So the opportunity came for me to move to Marin County. And so I did that. I got an apartment with a couple guys that I knew vaguely, just on the surface. And within a couple of days, the first one of the guys said to me, "Man, you sure like to drink a lot." So the embarrassment was there. And one of the reasons I wanted to move to Marin was so I wouldn't go to the Tenderloin. And that didn't work out too well because I just hopped on a bus and went anyway, and realized that the public transit in Marin County was a little more comfortable than the muni bus system in the city, but it still got me to the same place, right? And I'm still waking up on Market Street, and I'm still hating myself for the things I was doing. My mom wanted to talk to me about she wanted me to go talk to someone about my drinking. One time she sent a minister to the house. She worked in a Presbyterian church, and so the doorbell rang. I was high. I'd been smoking a couple joints by myself, and I just gave this guy a glazed-eyed look, and probably reeked of weed, and just kind of going through the whole thing of just trying to answer questions and knowing that something was wrong with me, but not even wanting to give it up. I didn't. It was a part of me. And so I just kind of went on. And when I had the opportunity to move to Marin, I took it. And the same thing was happening. And I didn't understand why. I couldn't get it. I had never really, the only time I had heard of Alcoholics Anonymous growing up was that a friend of mine that lived on my block, his dad would go. They had an Easy Does It bumper sticker on the back of their Ford LTD, right? And I asked him one time, "What is that?" And he told me, "Oh, my dad's going to AA." And what's AA and blah, 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 and all that. So I knew that there was help there because this guy was going, And so anyway, it's another failed suicide attempt, and it's December, and it's 1981, and I didn't know what to do. And the guy that delivered bread to the store I was working at had gotten sober. He had been to a place and he had been sober about a year and a half. And he and I used to get loaded, and he made me an offer that I wanted to refuse, but I couldn't because I didn't kill myself. So I figured I better show that I'm doing something about my drinking. And so I took the opportunity. I went to AA. I went on a Wednesday. I went again the next Wednesday. Then I drank for the next 8 months until I was fortunate enough to make it back here. And so I didn't have enough AA in that short period of time, in that 1 week, to screw up my drinking. I had enough AA to know, hey, maybe there's an answer here, but I'm not willing to or ready to do any of it yet. But thanks for the literature, thanks for the book, the meeting schedule and all that. And I just kind of tucked it away. But the funny thing is, I moved a couple times, but I always knew where that big book was. I always knew what box it was in. And so anyway, August rolls around and I go to this place, I get out, I start coming to AA in Marin County and started to really like what I saw. I started to understand what you guys were talking about. Because the people in AA would talk to me in a way that I could understand. No one was really talking above me. I wasn't getting a lot of therapeutic stuff, and people weren't really asking me about my childhood. You would talk to me about how you were drinking, and I could respond, and I could see that, man, you guys are pretty cool. The group of people that God, I look back on it now, that God, as I understand him, dropped me in on were guys that were enthusiastic about staying sober. It wasn't a drag for them to come to AA. And so it wasn't a drag for me to come to AA. I started liking the meetings. I started liking the people. Guys would let me hang around with them. I wasn't driving at the time. And so guys would come and pick me up. I didn't have a place to live. I stayed at my sister's for a week. I moved in with the guy that became my first sponsor. And then after 6 months, I got my own apartment. But all these things were happening and I was involved. I was getting commitments. I was doing things that were totally foreign to me, but I was liking what was going on, right? And so, like I said, the place I went to in Calistoga was kind of an AA boot camp. And there was a big old guy there that used to love to talk, and he had a voice that carried, and I believed what this guy would say. And he was a guy that really liked to quote chapter 3. And so I fell in love with chapter 3. And then I started to fall in love with chapter 2 and just read the book and go, man, I like that paragraph and that paragraph. And I couldn't really relate to Bill's story at the time. It wasn't until I started going to a book study that I could start to relate to Bill's story, because people would pluck things out of there and say, do you see this? Do you see that? And I go, oh yeah, I can relate to that. But I didn't see it just reading on my own. So there's a lot of value in reading the book with someone else. We weren't doing that too much back then, but I love doing it now. And but at a book study, that's what we were doing. It was like, man, there's good stuff in here. I can hear what other people are saying, and this book starts to come alive. And I was told, it was suggested, whenever I saw the words we, us, our, to include myself in that group. I was part of the we, us, and our because I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I had the third tradition, right? I had the desire to stop drinking. So they said, you're one of us, man. You're part of this thing. So then when I would read chapter 3, right? Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. Oh, that's good. And then I was told, whenever you see real alcoholic, go back to page 21 and see what a real alcoholic is. So you keep going back to that, then back to chapter 3. Nobody likes to think they are bodily and mentally different than his fellows, right? Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. And that really started to sink in, because all I ever really wanted to do was drink like my friends. I would always compare my drinking to my friends' drinking, right? They would go home. I wouldn't go home. So something was off with me. Even when I became a bar drinker, my friends at the bar would go home. I wouldn't go home. There was a few, we partied all night, but the majority, I'm talking the majority here. And so the words of that chapter really started to to hit me, right? To enjoy and control his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. That means I was an abnormal drinker, right? Because I could relate to that. And so I was buying into what you guys were talking about. And, and I hope you knew people that you're buying into what's in our book. It's not written by a bunch of scholars from Harvard or Johns Hopkins or some medical school. This is alcoholics sharing their own experience, just like we do at a meeting here, right? And they put it down on paper. And, how about the anniversary of the big book on April 10th? What was that, 87 years for our big book? That could be a birthday for this month, 87 years. But the book still comes alive, right? And what's in there. So I have a sponsor. We're doing the steps. I had the God thing that was a little confusing to me. I would use the God thing that you guys talked about as an excuse why I wouldn't come back to AA between that second and third meeting. And I know I share this a lot. And I spoke at a meeting over here in San Ramon about a month ago. And there's a couple of you that were here. But I always share this because they were just great moments for me and opening my eye, my come to believe moments. And, it was like I heard that AA would not open the gates of heaven so I could get in, but it would open the gates of hell so I could get out. And I knew when I heard that I had a shot at this program. That was my really first come to believe moment. And then the next one came soon thereafter, or right around the same time. This guy from Calistoga would say, he would say that I could never deny the fact that I didn't get to Alcoholics Anonymous as the result of someone else's prayer. I go, man, that's so true. Whether the parents, friends, cops, guys selling you booze at the liquor store, whatever. Other people could have been praying for me. And then when I get here to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? What do we do? What do we do tonight? Let's have a moment of silence let's have a moment of silence for the person who's still suffering, right? And that could have been me. All of a sudden, this 24-year-old kid walks through the door. So I'm buying into everything that's going on here. At my come to believe moment, I made my decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. After I did that, I was given a pen and paper. No, I actually had to get my own pen and paper and saying, go get your own. So I got a little notebook, right? I had a big sheet at home, but I was a bus rider still when I was going to work. So I could walk around with a little notepad in my back pocket, and I had a pen and I'd write things down. I was writing my 4-step, right? And because I'd be on the bus and I'd be looking out and I'd be reminded of things. And so I'd write little things down, then I'd transfer it to my list. And when I was ready to take my 5th step, that's the one step that I balked on, was my 5th, because I still had some embarrassment about the things I had done. And but the guy that became my second sponsor, he pointed out in the book, in Into Action, where it says basically where the people that didn't do their 5th step, invariably they got drunk. And I did not want that to happen. By this time I'm rolling, and I made an appointment with my sponsor to do my 5th step. And after I did that, I felt like I was a part of you. Where I felt good before, I felt now that I was really a member, because there was no secrets. I wasn't carrying those secrets. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. And I was a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Page 75 says we could look the world in the eye. So I could really look the world in the eye, not in a cocky way or egotistical way, but more of a humble way, saying, man, I got through that and I get to be sober here. So I was appreciative of my sobriety, had a lot of good teachers, getting here. We have so many good teachers in this room, right? And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it's also the other way when guys are looking for people to sponsor. Sometimes we hear, I'm hunting for someone to sponsor. I said, don't hunt, man. When the teacher is ready, the student will appear. Just be available, and it's pretty cool stuff. So when that stuff started to happen for me, right, because I felt bad, I'm not sponsoring anyone, but then all of a sudden I'm starting to sponsor people, right? So maybe there was a change in me that people felt like asking, right? And as it stands now, I still get to sponsor a number of guys, but if I look back on it, there's probably more guys that I used to sponsor than I sponsor now, right? That doesn't mean everyone's getting loaded, but people die, people leave AA. And, but the fact is that I still get to come here, and there's always waves of people coming in. So I want to be available. I want to be available. I want to help to keep the doors open for Alcoholics Anonymous, for the people that haven't been here yet, or for the people that have been here before and want to come back, And I don't want to be one of those guys that's sitting in a room when someone wants to come back and sees me here, but they turn around and leave because I said something stupid to them. I think the word stupidity is used a couple times in working with others, because sometimes my ego can get in the way of trying to help someone, right? And I say, you a-hole, did you do that? I'm not going to do that. I say, come on in, man, have a seat, take a load off. You're going to be all right for this next hour. We can talk about what happened, right? And to me, I've learned that here, and I've learned that's more of who I am. I thought my first couple of years, I was kind of a hard ass, I'll say that, and maybe it served me well for the time, at the time, but over time, I've changed here in AA, and I've kind of rolled with the changes just like our society has, right? And there's a sense of gratitude that comes, and I'm humbled by what goes on here, of how people's lives change, and just to be a part of it blows me away. I got into service right away, Central's work, doing a commitment at the central office, then being a committee member there, and then doing general service, and in the meantime, doing meeting service, whether it's making coffee, setting up chairs, being a secretary, being a treasurer, doing all this stuff, and getting to be a part of what goes on here. And we find out that, meetings aren't catered. People aren't coming in to set up our chairs or take them down. When smoking had to go away, that are we being responsible smokers and smoking where the meeting wants us to, or where the landlord wants us to? Not necessarily the meeting, but we don't want to lose a meeting. We've lost a lot of meetings because of smoking, and we don't want that to continue. So we got to be responsible smokers. Hell, we thought, many people thought the world was going to end when you couldn't smoke in a bar in California anymore, but there's still people drinking, and they're still coming to AA. So it's a little easier now, maybe, because couldn't smoke in a bar, so you can't smoke in AA. It's all right. Some people try to vape in AA. I don't quite understand that, but, you got to vape outside with the smokers, right? But all this stuff, I have a new attitude and outlook upon life, and I realize that no matter how long I'm sober, I'm always going to be the problem. My thinking is always going to be the problem. And if I don't pay attention to that, I pay the price for it. And so there's a couple little yardsticks that I like to use. And one of them is the first line of the 10-step promise, what we call the 10-step promises, in that, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, for by this time sanity will have returned. So when I have this turmoil going on inside, or I want to jump and bark at someone, I haven't ceased fighting. I'm fighting, right? And there may be a little bit of insanity in me going on at that time. Maybe not on a wide scale, but it's not my natural thing, It used to be my natural thing to want to pick fights, but that's not how it is today, right? And so I get to use that. I get to use that as a kind of a yardstick on what's my spiritual condition today, right? And it's a lot different than I was. I remember when I read that paragraph for the first time. I was going through the steps. I'd made a lot of amends. I read that paragraph and I jumped. I was lying down reading it, and I jumped to my knees and I go, "Are you kidding me? Is this what's going to happen to me? That I'm not even gonna swear off drinking. The problem has been removed." And incredible stuff. And a couple paragraphs later, I've developed a God consciousness, right? And the book calls it a vital sixth sense. And I thought about that. And, so if it's the vital sixth sense, that means there's five before, right? And I had learned about the five senses. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. But I could see, I could taste, I could touch, I could smell, I could hear. And you people said that I was going to develop a vital sixth sense. And the vital sixth sense is God consciousness. So oftentimes when a problem comes up or when something's going wrong, my first thought can be, where's God in all this? Where is God in all this? You know, is this really a problem, or am I turning it into a problem? Am I being impatient? Do I think things are going on that aren't really going on, right? My fear can be very delusional as opposed to what's really happening. And oftentimes still not related to alcohol, I'm unable to differentiate the true from the false, right? Because my mind will take off and assume, you know, it'll lead me to believe that I know what's going on. I really know what's going on, and it's not true at all, right? So I've learned here to be teachable and to keep trying to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And you know, and so Alcoholics Anonymous has given me an incredible life. You know, I will never be able to repay what's been so freely given to me. And you know, it's funny. We hear a lot about, you know, come on in, it's free, and it's like, it's kind of free. You had to pay up front to get here. I mean, it cost a lot of money to get here to Alcoholics Anonymous when you think about it. So once you're here, you don't have to put anything in the basket. Maybe you have to give us time. And I have found the most valuable thing that one person can give another is time. It's not money, it's time. And so that's where sponsorship comes in. But it's really, you know, there was a hefty entry fee to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys would have given it to me long before I got here, but I refused to take it. I said, no, I want to pay more, you know? And so we paid a lot to get here. And, you know, but now I know I want to stay here, and I want to see the doors stay open for the people that haven't reached us yet. And like I said, the people that have been here before and aren't with us anymore. You know, we've been to a lot of services and memorials. I went to a memorial today, but it was a good one. You know, we had a member of our fellowship die back in December, and he was 51 years sober, and there was a gathering today. COVID kind of changed the urgencies to memorial services, right? And so today's happened, and it was beautiful. I was glad to be able to be there and participate in it and know that this was happening here tonight. I knew I would be at a meeting tonight. And, you know, and so some good things going on in my life. You know, I travel a lot. I'm married and have a good life at home, still an active member, still a meeting goer. I don't like to let 72 hours go by without hitting a meeting. I go on Monday. I go to an 11-step on Tuesday. I go to a book study on Friday. We are in the 4th chapter of the book study, and we read the asterisk. So we just read the spiritual experience on Friday night, and I think that's 4 or 5 times where the asterisk is in chapters 2, 3, and 4. And we keep going back and reading it again and trying to learn, trying to grow in understanding and effectiveness, trying to incorporate this stuff into our life so life doesn't seem like such a big deal. Like I said, travel. Few of you know I'm leaving Tuesday. I'm going to New Orleans for a couple weeks. I was like I said, I'm a music guy, and lately, over the last number of years, I've been able to travel and hear some music. So this will be my 4th year in a row, and it's, you know, I'm so fortunate. And I'll go there on Tuesday. I'll be gone for 2 weeks and come back. But I have regular meetings I go to in New Orleans. You know, and a guy even told me last year. He said, he looked at me, shook his head, and said, "You're not a visitor anymore, man." I said, "No, thank you." You know, I took it as a compliment. But I've learned that Alcoholics Anonymous is very portable, right? And wherever I am, I should go to meetings if I can. And so I make it a point to do that. And, you know, and now with the online feature, although online meetings have been there before, they've been there for a while. Now they're more mainstream after COVID. Man, if I'm not going to meetings online as a regular thing, if I'm away and I can't reach a meeting or can't find it, I'm kind of going to any lengths not to go. You know, I'm kind of taking a break. And what I learned early, and I still believe today, no days off from this thing. You know, whenever I get up, I pick up the book, Daily Reflections. I love Daily Reflections. And it's simple. It's written for a guy like me that can understand. I like reading 82 to 88. I don't do it every day, but I do it. And it's just to kind of get myself settled, right? I sit for a half hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes I meditate. Sometimes my mind wanders, but I concentrate on giving myself some time during the morning so I can be ready for the day, right? And then whatever the day brings, I am prepared for. I don't know what it is, but I'm a big believer that whatever happens in my life today, I have already been prepared for. And every step I've taken here in Alcoholics Anonymous, everything I've done has led me to today. And hopefully it's the same tomorrow. You know, if I wake up tomorrow, whatever happens tomorrow, I will have been prepared for if I take the time in the morning and set myself straight. So in closing, I'm really grateful that you guys listened tonight and we're here. I'm one of those guys that likes to read something at the end so you can forget what I said and remember to go home and look at what it is. And I have a few favorites. So I picked part of Dr. Bob's farewell talk tonight. So I'm gonna read the last couple of paragraphs of that if you don't mind. So this was from his talk in 1950, before he died. Well, obviously before he died. And you know, he died, I believe he died in November of 1950, and this is from our first international convention in Cleveland. And so this is Dr. Bob talking. There are two or three things that flash into my mind, which would be fitting to lay a little emphasis. One is the simplicity of the program. Let's not louse it up with Freudian complexes and things that are interesting to the scientific mind, but have very little to do with our actual AA work. Our 12 steps, when simmered down to the last, resolve themselves into the words love and service. Hey, that's a good name for a meeting. We understand what love is and we understand what service is. So let's bear those two things in mind. Let's also remember to guard that erring member, the tongue. You could probably put in send now too, right? Or enter. And if we must use it, let's use it with kindness and consideration and tolerance. And one more thing, none of us would be here today if someone hadn't taken time to explain things to us, to give us a little pat on the back, to take us to a meeting or two, to do numerous things, to do numerous little kind and thoughtful acts in our behalf. So let us never get such a degree of smug complacency that we're not willing to extend or attempt to extend to our less fortunate brothers that help, which has been given so freely, so beneficial to us. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.